Hello and welcome to The Right Idea, where we discuss the people, policy, and politics that drive Texas. I'm your host, Brian Phillips. I'm the Chief Communications Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And today we're actually recording a very special issue to get this information out very quickly because we have a rapidly unfolding situation at school districts across Texas where student walkouts in protest of immigration and customs enforcement actions have sparked legal questions, state investigations, and intense debate about students' rights and the role of public education. In recent weeks, hundreds of students in districts across Texas have staged walkouts to protest ICE policies and actions. In response, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, the Texas Education Agency, and the Attorney General have publicly criticized these actions, warning that districts could lose funding or face investigations, and school officials could face disciplinary measures if they facilitate walkouts during school hours. Supporters of the walkouts argue that these state measures chill student free speech and undermine civic learning, while I imagine most Texans and parents say that kids are violating school policy, creating unnecessary disruptions, and putting children in dangerous situations. As you can see, there's no Derek here today, but we are joined by a rock star panel who will help us unpack all of these issues. Rob Henneke is TPPF's Executive Director and General Counsel. Rob served as the twice-elected Kerr County Attorney and as an Assistant Attorney General in the General Litigation Division under then Attorney General Greg Abbott. Mandy Drogin is the Campaign Director for TPPF's Government Reform and Oversight Coalition, which advocates for transparency and accountability in government and, more notably, was one of the leading voices helping to pass historic school choice legislation last year in Texas. Rob, Mandy, welcome to The Right Idea.
Thanks for having us.
Let's go.
All right, let's jump in. I mean, let's just start with the basic facts here, Rob. There's all of these accusations being thrown out or these claims being thrown out that, children or the students are exercising their First Amendment rights. So what is it? What rights do students have to do these kinds of actions?
So let me put two important legal concepts on the table that's going to inform our discussion here today. Number one, we're talking about children. We're talking about children that don't have the autonomous ability to make their own legal decisions. They can't enter into contracts. They can't buy property. They can't decide if they're going to go to school or not. The law says they have to go to school, and their parents put them at the school. They don't have the ability to undo that themselves. They may walk off a campus, but that's not something that they have the legal power to do because they're children. And so let's keep the context that in all of this, we're talking about children who are engaging in conduct that's actually pretty dangerous for them. The other thing that's getting conflated in the First Amendment context is separate the message from the method. And this is what is being conflated by the school districts that are attempting to justify their action. Yes, there is constitutional protections of free speech to even juveniles. That's the message. We're not talking about the message. We're talking about the method. The First Amendment is not applying to the method. In this context, look, schools can't create a harsher sanction for somebody just because they're expressing their First Amendment rights. Likewise, they can't subsidize that by waiving all of the rules. But what they're required to do under this method is they're required to enforce the school rules of discipline that would create a disincentive for children walking off and leaving campus and putting themselves into a dangerous situation. So just like cutting class gets you suspended, or you have an absence, or you get zeros on your assignments, or you get in trouble with your parents, all of those kind of rules apply in the same context, and there's no magic wand that just gets rid of the rules of the school simply because a child is engaging in a form of speech expression that happens to be endorsed by the school administration.
So the kids just can't stand up. I mean, what happens? Because this is really where the debate is happening, at least online, as far as I'm seeing, is kids are just standing up in the middle of biology class at 11 a.m. and saying, now's my time. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go protest this. Try and stop me. ACLU and others are saying, yeah, that's the way it works. That if a child or that if a student wants to express themselves, however they want to express themselves, the school has no right to then punish them as they're executing their constitutional rights.
It's not punishing them for exercising their speech. It's punishing them for standing up in the middle of biology class and disrupting the class or walking out. If you have A child who gets up in the middle of science class and yells and is disruptive or says something, the teacher should say, sit down. I'm teaching here. And it's, and that's also kind of a red herring too, because we know from eyewitness accounts, that's not what's happening. It's the teachers that are like opening the door to the classroom and saying, all right, guys, it's protest time. Everybody, let's go. And is escorting the children out of the classroom. But even if this was just happening completely on its own, completely spontaneous by the child, you have the legal obligation for the teachers and the administrators to enforce the rules of school. You don't get to stand up in the middle of the class. You don't get to walk out in the middle of the class. You don't get to leave campus. And in any other context, when you do that, what happens? You get a detention, you get a 0, you get in-school suspension, you get a call to your parents. Like, the rules have to be enforced because those are the policies of the school, and there's not a First Amendment exception to the discipline policy of a school district.
Mandy, I have 2 children, but neither one of them are in school quite yet. You have several children in school. What is that feeling like? I mean, when you saw this happening and you sort of internalized it or personalized it, like, how would you react if you found out that you, without your permission, without your knowledge or your permission, a group of kids, including now, your child, your son or daughter, is now, miles away from the school, running up and down, downtown cities, protesting. I mean, how would you feel about that?
Terrified. I would be absolutely terrified. Now, to be clear, my kids are in a classical school, a classical public
okay,
charter
maybe not
school.
Your kids.
Right. Well, no, but I say that because we selected this environment. Because our kids, my daughter is literally reciting the preamble to the Constitution right now. This is important to note. You rattled off some facts. I want to actually lay to the baseline of facts. In the latest social studies history exams, 30% of our 8th graders passed. So when we're talking about what this is about, this is all, I would say, the radical secular Marxist weaponization of children. And that is because they claim, it's their civic rights, it's their First Amendment rights. These kids don't know the First Amendment. They don't know the Second Amendment. They can't name the first 10 amendments. I will guarantee if we took a microphone down there, just like we've seen all across our great country, where we've had people go out and interview others and ask them, these kids don't know. They are being weaponized. They have been indoctrinated from the time they entered in kindergarten. Let's not forget, right here in Austin ISD, where we're watching thousands of kids be thrown out into the streets. And I say that, I don't care if they open the door themselves. These are children, and they do not understand that what they are protesting is against the sovereignty of America, but also we are trying to get rid of rapists, murderers, the worst of the worst that have infiltrated our borders and said, you may not be here. And they are being weaponized to protest against that with no understanding of what the Constitution says, what any of our legal doctrine says. So I do not buy this nonsense. I think you said the ACLU and the other radical secular Marxists that have partnered with all of the leftist groups to try and indoctrinate our kids. But these kids, they can't name what a woman is, and they sure as heck don't know what a border is. So no, I will guarantee you, if you ask them to name their First Amendment rights, they could not name them. And that is proof in the pudding. These kids have been weaponized. They have been indoctrinated. Shame on every adult that have facilitated this. And I heard you say could. They could be prosecuted. They could be this for the adults. Every single adult that is found protecting or promoting these rallies or protests or whatever they want to call them, they should be fired, and their teacher's license or administrative credentials should be stripped, and they should be kicked out of our public school system. This is why parents are fleeing en masse from Austin ISD and so many others. We're at less than a week into the launch of the education freedom accounts, and there's over 75,000 parents across the state of Texas and growing that say, I want my kid out of these indoctrination centers. We can try and dress it up all we want. Until we clean up our house, these public school systems, this will keep on happening. Adults will keep hurting children by weaponizing them, and there will see no personal accountability. So as a mama bear, I would be terrified, and then I'd be fighting back.
So you hit on a couple of things I want to get to with both of you, but first, and just jumping on that, what do you believe the schools should be doing? So, because there is evidence that some of this, there is a lot of this that is being organized outside of the school. Now, we don't know if that faculty, and all of that is being doing.
We have
but my point is, let me get to the
faculty.
question, is that let's just say that you are a principal or a superintendent who's seeing this. And let's just give you the benefit of the doubt. You're not promoting it personally within the school. You've told your faculty they can't be supportive of it, and yet these organizations are doing this anyway, and the kids are about to walk out. What should you be doing as a school, as a faculty? What is the right, course of action at that point?
I'd be getting on the PA system and making it known to every single student that they will receive zeros for the classes that they walk out on, and they will receive detention for the classes that they miss for each and every one of them. And then I will also remind the teachers that if they're caught facilitating or promoting any of this, they will be removed from the classroom and the entire system as a whole. And then I would be standing at the only door that kids could exit and be handing out detention slips. That's fine. I would remind them that the school bell ends, most of them at 3 or 3:30, somewhere around that in the state of Texas. These kids, when they are off of the public grounds, when they are out of the responsibility of these administrators, yes, go protest, kids. Go do what you want. If your parents want to take you to the Capitol to hold a sign and whatever, that's on them. But while the taxpayers of Texas are paying for you to get an education, your rear end should be in that seat trying to learn and not being indoctrinated to go out and participate in hyper political situations that are not only dangerous, but they also do not understand what the political ideologies are undergirding all of these protests.
And we'll get to
that was one of the ironies I noticed last week. We're downtown in Austin, and so all of these children have been walking past the Texas Public Policy Foundation. All of these protests evaporated when school was over. Like this was a free for all,
right?
Where the rules, the doors got thrown open, and everybody had a fun time making a run for it. And 12-year-old little girls on the streets of Congress Avenue in downtown Austin, with all of the other challenges in terms of crime and drugs and homelessness that go on that we struggle with. But these unsupervised children were doing it. But as soon as school would have been over, they're all gone, because this wasn't about. This was, skip school, go have a fun, frolic time. You saw that because, to Mandy's point, when there was the opportunity in the appropriate way to make a free speech expression, you didn't see anybody.
It's been remarkable to me that we're now going on 2 weeks of this, and dozens of districts, dozens and dozens of schools. 14 campuses alone in Austin had walkouts, including middle schoolers. The one you're talking about that went right past our offices, it was 11 and 12-year-olds who were wearing backpacks bigger than the kids.
Standing next to mentally ill homeless people. Thank God we had a colleague that stood out there and watched. He talked to them and engaged with them, but he was watching this to protect them.
Yeah.
He's sitting there watching young children next to mentally unstable, drug-addicted, homeless people 10 yards away from each other, if that. It was dangerous.
It's been remarkable to me that despite the widespreadness of this across campuses in major urban cities and suburbs, there hasn't been a single statement from anyone, from any school official so far as I can tell, that has offered any alternative for the kids, as a way for the kids to express themselves that isn't disruptive and that isn't dangerous. There's not been one principal or superintendent. Again, maybe I missed it, but of all the statements that have come out, not one superintendent or principal has said, hey, stay in school at 4:30. We'll have an assembly and we'll put up a microphone and you all can come into the assembly and complain about ICE or get everything off your chest, in a safe, non-disruptive way. Is that a telling sign about what about what the administrators, what
100%.
side they're on?
It's telling, and it's indicative of what we've been seeing for over a decade. You know, we're talking about the secular Marxists that infiltrated the entire system, really starting at the colleges of education. You got to remember, the majority of our teachers are going through our colleges of education, where the pedagogy of the oppressed, that is a Brazilian Marxist named Paulo Freire, that is the number one used and quoted book in our colleges of education throughout Texas and throughout our country. This has been a systemic problem for decades, and we're really seeing it come to a head, where we were teaching kids to hate America, where we were teaching kids, calling them the colonizers, right? You get rid of Columbus Day. You don't call it Thanksgiving. You start promoting this idea of somehow that if you're white, male, and Christian, you're bad. There's a lack of understanding of the development of Western civilization because we are spending time teaching teachers how to read transgender books like My Shadow is Purple that's being read to first graders in Austin ISD. This is all a part of this play, this identity politics, the intersectionality. We saw Gene Wu, the head of the Democratic caucus, you could call him the most powerful Democrat in the House, the state House of Texas. He said the quiet part out loud this week when he said that we should be overthrowing the government. This came from a leader that, by the way, was born in communist China, and he is now here representing Democrats. This intersectionality of if you're brown, if you're black, if you're poor, if you're woman, if you're this, if you're that, if you're anything other than a white Christian male, then you are the oppressed. That is Marxism 101, and we are seeing this live in action play out after generations of percolating under the surface. It is now here, and this is why I say we have to take back our education system.
And so I think, go ahead. I was going to say, and tying into Mandy's point as well, I mean, part of this is the abuse of discretion of the school officials and administrators that are facilitating this. Let's go back to, again, these are children. These are children, and to Mandy's point, if you had the principal of the school of Keeling Middle School in Austin, Texas, that was standing, which is one of those like honors magnet schools, standing at the front door telling all of the students there, go back to your classroom right now or you're going to get detention and zeros, all the kids would have remained in their seats and not be roaming the streets of Austin. But the abuse of this by the administrators who come from this cultural lens that Mandy is describing is they're the ones that are manipulating the children to have their viewpoints. They are saying, that they are opposed to President Trump. They are opposed to the rule of law, that they want to support these. And so they're misusing their places of power by deploying these children to be able to go out there and wreak chaos and havoc and get into dangerous situations that then gets the attention of the media. The reason that they're not having, to your point, Brian, the after-school civic discussion in the auditorium is because that doesn't get news cameras there. That doesn't get the clicks and the watches from something as, this kind of out-of-control situation. So really, they're the ones that are manipulating and using the children to be able to go out and amplify the viewpoint because you don't see this in other situations. School decorum and rules remain in force when, other issues of public policy or political, discourse happen. It's just in a situation like this because the teachers and superintendents themselves personally agree with the protests against our government, that they're the ones that are deploying the students and using the school resources to amplify their own personal beliefs. And that's a complete misuse of their status. That's an abuse of power. And it's creating a dangerous situation for these boys and girls.
And the governor, TEA, and the attorney general have all said that they were going to investigate what was happening. Yeah. What Rob? How do you investigate that? Like, what do you? I mean, because we're all fairly certain, and this I want to get to this sort of question of like, well, what constitutes support, neutrality, and opposition with regard. So if a teacher doesn't stand in front of the door, but just says, hey, I'm not going to tackle somebody if they're going to leave, does that mean that they're in support of what the kids are doing, or they're just are they caught in kind of a bad, a rock and a hard place by what the kids are doing?
Look, I understand the challenges in a public school setting where you have, rules on educators about being able to lay hands on a child or apply force or something like that. But I also understand that in the school setting, we also have some important school safety requirements because of things that have happened in Texas and other states that make it very, very important that you provide a safe school environment, that you know where every child is, and you're able to account for that child from the second that they are dropped off in the morning to the second that they get on the school bus at the end of the day. So those policies have to be followed, but I believe, based on all the evidence that I've seen, the social media reports, the videos, the testimonials from students, is that the teachers in the campuses that have had these, jailbreaks have not been the ones imposing as the administrators and teachers and the positions of authority these rules. Mm-hmm. They have been encouraging it. They have been opening the school doors. We have seen ourselves firsthand in many cases. Some of them have been escorting the children off campus downtown, and then in other situations, leaving the kids by themselves. There has been active cooperation by the school administrators using ISD police to escort them. All of these things that show, quite a bit of collaboration there. And so, have an investigation, look into the conduct of each of the teachers when these classes left and have them justify themselves. But I think in most, if not all instances, you're going to find that a teacher or a principal or an administrator violated the school policies in allowing to happen what they had happen, and then they should be held accountable with their employment for sanctions up into, termination and revocation of licenses.
Mandy, the Austin ISD, well, first of all, Austin ISD thinks everybody's picking on them because it really kind of started with them, and they had 14 campuses in one day. It took everybody by surprise. And, if you don't want,
Except for all the administrators and teachers that were opening the door and walking the kids. Lively Middle School's definitely assistant principal. He was walking the kids right in front of our building, and their principal was right there with them. Then left a group. Let's be clear.
I also think if you don't want the governor picking on you, number one, the governor lives in Austin ISD, and you were traipsing hundreds of 12-year-olds past his house, literally on the way to the Capitol. So maybe don't do that next time. But where's the line for you? I mean, in terms of what is support, what is trying to be neutral versus what we would all expect to see is an actual effort to try and stop the children from breaking school policies and disrupting classes. Like, where's the line for you there that goes into, no, this is active support?
The line is that if you had any positive promotion of the walkouts, if you facilitated the unlocking or the opening of doors, and if you facilitated the movement off of school ground where there are protections, where there are security measures in place, where kids were thrown out into the wild, gone. Off campus, you have no reason. And let's also be clear, there is an educator code of conduct. These educators have absolutely utilized subversive techniques, and they're utilizing hyperbolic language like, we can't put our hands on him. What do you want us to do? Tackle him. I want you to make it abundantly clear as soon as you got word that this was going on, that here are the consequences. If I even think that my children are going to do something that disobeys me, maybe they're going to turn on the TV before homework is done, or maybe they're going to whatever. I don't know. I'm going to tell them, just to be clear, before you make a bad decision, here are the consequences. And then you know what happens if children make bad decisions, as they do? I enforce them. But that's not what we saw here. So they are going to try and use a lot of semantics. And no. There needs to be some heads rolling on this. The principal, the assistant principal, we have these people on camera from Lively Middle School. Those are the first ones they need to go. Get them out. This sends a message to the entire system. And it's very clear as parents, if you discipline one kid, the other ones realize, I'm not going to do that. That is what we need to see. And we need to see it across the board, because if we want to talk about what's happening, look, we can go back to the George Floyd riots, where all of that was spun up by many of the same people. Roy Neville Singham, the communist guy that is a billionaire from America, lives with the CCP in China now. His wife has Code Pink, who's funding all this stuff. The Occupy Wall Street. This is the wheel of intersectionality protests. They are trying to make minorities seem like that they are somehow less than, and that the government or the system is against them. That's the George Floyd protest. Occupy Wall Street was about capitalists and how bad it is that capitalism has lifted more people out of poverty than anywhere in the world. But oh no, it's bad. Let's try communism that's killed 100 million people. Then you go to this is ICE. Now they're trying to make this about minorities again, or immigrants. Look, we have a legal system. Come through our legal ports of entry. If you have a claim of asylum, come through our legal ports of entry. We have a system in place, and this chaos just hurts those that are trying to do it right. So then now they've moved on to children. They've moved on to children for their activist plan. And let's be clear, they're trying to give children the rights of adults, which they don't have. Their brain is not developed enough. And as crazy as this might sound, this is no different. It's actually the same wackadoos that are trying to call pedophiles MAPS, minor attracted people. This is all the secular Marxists that are doing everything they can to break the bonds of society, of Western civilization, the bonds of parent and child. And they do it by playing off of fears and using hyperbolic nonsense. Like, we can't tackle them. No, but you could implement some punishments for them breaking the rules. None of them did it. Take them out.
And there too on that. I mean, let's also, call a foul on this. This was known in advance. This was planned in advance. 14 campuses in Austin Independent School District didn't just on their own on the same day just say, oh, we're just all going to walk out. And if the leadership of that school and of the school district on the front end had said faculty meeting, if any one of y'all facilitates this, you are fired.
Yep.
None of this happens. Doesn't happen in Hayes County. Doesn't happen in San Antonio. It doesn't happen in the other copycat areas when they knew this was coming, and they know that more is coming. I mean, there was a video last week where the chief of police for Austin ISD talks about the upcoming future protests that are planned and how they're planning on responding there in the future, which still continues using school resources to help to coordinate and escort and facilitate this. But, on the front end, absolutely, if the school leadership said, this is inappropriate. We are not doing this at school time. We're going to follow the rules of the schools of discipline that apply to all children in all contexts. And if you encourage children to break those rules that puts themselves in a dangerous situation, you are fired. It all goes away.
See, this is what I think. I think those of us who are looking at this, who are just wishing that the adults would act like adults. I mean, that's the really disheartening thing here is that there's, if my daughter does something she doesn't want me to do, just like your excuse, I don't just throw up my hands and say, well, what am I supposed to do? Tackle her? It's like, no, you explain to her why brushing her teeth every night is important. And so it seems like there is a moment there could be, if they were really interested in
They're
it, Mandy,
not, though.
There could be a moment where they sit the kids down and say, look, you're trying to participate in civil discourse and civics discussions. There's a whole body of evidence. Let's go back to, Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. Let's go back and talk about these things, these major moments in American history. But that's not it. At some point, you just have to honestly conclude that that's not what they want. That in fact, the reason why they're not doing those things is because they have to want the disruptions. They want our kids being fearful, anxious, and angry because in their philosophy that they learned when they were going through teaching school, their philosophy tells them that the only way to change things is through this method.
That's 100% correct. And this is the problem, is we have an entire generation of education leadership right now in our schools that are a part of the woke mafia. There's no other way. That's what they are. I call it an education cartel. They have come up through systems. We heard it at the Kamala Harris rally in 2024 when the teacher stood up and said the quiet parts out loud. I went into education because it was the greatest opportunity for social justice. Well, you know what that sounds a lot like? The Democratic Socialists of America pamphlet, where they call on teachers or people to become teachers so that they can participate in training the next social justice warriors. This is a concerted effort to destroy Western civilization. If we break it down on what it is, and these leaders, these adults, they believe that. Again, 30% of our kids pass a basic state test on civics and history. That is appalling, but it explains why you've got these kids that have no baseline understanding of the development of Western civilization. If you asked them what the Magna Carta was, they couldn't tell you. If you asked them what 3 of the 10 Bill of Rights are, they couldn't tell you. It's sad and it's heartbreaking, and more people need to understand the severity of this as we approach celebrating 250 years of the greatest nation that's ever existed on the face of the earth. We have saved the world multiple times. We talk about World War I, World War II. We are the defenders of freedom. And what is happening is you have Marxists at that baseline, whether it's called Democratic Socialists of America, communists, whatever you want to call them, it's Marxist ideology at its baseline. They are breaking up now kids. Now it's not just going after adults, whether you're in the LGBTQ community, whether you're in the Black community, whether you're immigrant, whether you're brown, whatever it is, or whether you're Islam, whether you're whatever. I mean, all of this, that's what they focused on now. Now they are looking at the ideological capture of our children, and it has worked. It has worked for decades. We see it in adults right now, and now we are seeing it in our children, and we must fight back against this ideological capture that is going on, because if we don't, we will not celebrate 300 years.
And I think the consequences too, Brian, what I think about is, what really is going to matter is consequences to the school districts in terms of funding and employment. It's analogous absolutely to some of the other, kind of local level rebellions that we've seen in Texas. Several years ago, there was a whole defund the police type movement with the cities that were getting rid of their police departments. And when the state of Texas passed a law and said, if you do this, we take away your funding, they all quit. Because at the end of the day, in these government school type settings, their paycheck, their retirement, their state funding is what matters the most. And the way to quash this is to have consequences there. And I really commend Governor Abbott, General Paxton, Commissioner Morath for coming in very quick and saying, we're going to investigate this, we're going to hold this accountable. But when people lose their jobs, this stops happening. Because it's all fun and games until, you lose your guaranteed paycheck and your status and your career and all of that. And this is as serious as a heart attack as it needs to be.
Do you think that there needs to be state action from a legislative perspective? One of the pieces we haven't talked about is that state legislators have come out and been vocal about it. There have been a number that have said, here's the way it should work, and if it doesn't work that way, then we're going to go next session and we're going to make sure that it works that way. Are there legislative fixes that need to happen?
So I think twofold. One, and I truly am not being, hysterical in stating the concern that I had over this. I mean, you had that situation in San Marcos, Hays County somewhere. It was wrong. Shouldn't have done it. But the bystander was driving past and saw these kids that were, running and whatever, and took it on himself, which he should not have done, to get out and try to stop them. Ended up getting in a fight with the juveniles that was on, viral and all of that. So here he's in a fight with these kids who should be in school. That's dangerous. I'm glad he was charged with the crime, but he wouldn't have been in that position had they not been there in the first place. You had another situation where, walking back from the protest, this 11, 12-year-old girl, she got lost. And she just wandered around. 5
miles from her school.
5 miles. She ended up at a different government building and walked in there. I mean, this is a reason, children disappear. This is a reason why we have attendance, not just so the schools get money, but because if little Susie doesn't show up for third period, we're expecting the schools to say, where's little Susie?
Right.
Not just go, I don't know.
She's out
I
protesting.
saw her like running down the
She can leave
street.
whenever she
So
wants.
we got to throw the book at them. And then if we need a bigger book, let's go back to the legislature and do that. But I think that there's a lot of tools that are out there in suing the school districts, in looking at revoking their funding, and looking at the teacher certifications, enforcement procedures. We can't take this too seriously because, we have children that are harmed every single day. They get put into dangerous situations. And here, they were purposefully put into dangerous situations by the hundreds and by the thousands, and there, but for the grace of God, we didn't have a tragedy.
Mandy, how do parents get involved with this? I mean, the state legislature is one thing, but probably not going to call a special session between now and the end of the school year. How do parents figure out what to do here?
So we have a new inspector general of the Texas Education Agency, Levi Fuller. He has a background in investigating particularly sexual predators. He led the battle in the military to get sexual predators out when that was going on. But of course, he's the inspector general of educator misconduct. And I think he is going to do a fantastic job of going after the predators in our classrooms, but also the educators, the teachers and the administrators that are breaking the law, breaking the educator code of conduct, and breaking the trust of parents. So I would encourage parents to submit to the new Inspector General, Levi Fuller. You can go on to TEA's website and type in Inspector General, and it'll pull up a place where you can submit a complaint. I think that parents should be doing that. I think that parents should put their school boards on notice. I think they should let them know that this is literally the reason that the parent empowerment movement of public school, private school, charter school, homeschool parents have latched arms, followed behind our great governor, Governor Abbott, to say we are going to give parents choices and we are going to reform a public education system that have been run off the rails by the very people that are participating in these protests and facilitating them. But you brought up a question about the legislature. We are less than 1 year away. We'll be we'll be at the beginning of the 90th legislative session, and what we're going to see from school leaders and their taxpayer-funded lobbyists, right? These associations. Texas Association of School Boards, Texas Association of School Administrators, Bexar County Education Coalition, Guadalupe County. There's so many of these entities that are going to take our tax dollars, go up to the Capitol and say, if you just gave us more money, we could fix it all. Parents and patriots need to know we spent $100 billion on public education last year. That was $18,125 per student. 50% of them can't read on grade levels. 60% can't do math on grade level, and 70% cannot do history on grade level. When we are looking at this, HB 3 2019 has been the biggest funding boondoggle that we have ever seen. It was hailed as this salvation for public education funding, but what it did is it opened the door for 60 cents on the dollar to fly out of our classrooms, into the pockets of the profiteers, into the taxpayer-funded lobbyist pockets, and then they show back up and beg, plead, and again, weaponize children to say they don't have enough money. What is happening in the education system? I applaud Governor Abbott. I applaud Commissioner Rath, Attorney General Paxton, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, all of these leaders, as well as our legislative leaders that see the problem now. And the best disinfectant is sunlight. So if you are a parent, either put up the evidence that you have online, tag the governor, tag the commissioner, tag the inspector general, tag all of these people so they can see it, send it in, and then show up. Show up here. The Parent Empowerment Coalition will be there fighting, not just to expand education choice and freedom for parents by expanding the education freedom accounts, but also to say we have to reform what's going on in our system. Show up on February 25th to the SBOE meeting where we're going to be fighting against the Marxists and the Islamists that are fighting the new history and social studies curriculum. Parents, you have to show up. I don't care if you still have your pajamas on. I don't care if you don't have your hair or makeup done, mamas. We need you to show up and fight back and tell the leadership, tell the decision makers, tell the legislators, we are demanding a change. It's for our kids. It's for the next generation of Texans.
Rob, this, the walkout started happening 2 Fridays ago, and then just 5 days later, Texas opened up applications for its massive school choice program. Now, I'm a PR guy, a comms guy, a marketing guy. I don't think I could have scripted a better marketing campaign for parents who want to get their kids out of public school and in a better situation than these pictures and videos of the kids being let out of school to go and push this radical Marxist nonsense. Couldn't have scripted a better marketing campaign for school choice than that. I mean, is this a sign of the times? I mean, is this, what do you think about our school choice program and kind of what this means for what parents are going to be, faced with over the next, 3 or 4 months?
Well, I mean, the energy in the initial enrollment with what's going to be the biggest day one school choice program in the country is you've had, 79,000 Texas parents sign their children up to get these education savings accounts so that they can take their child and put their child in a different education setting. And so that's been such a successful first week in enrollment. But I would say the message is, that there is an alternative for the parents that are sitting at home, that are listening to this, or someone and your child was affected by these walkouts, that you're upset that your son or daughter was just released into the wild, and you feel helpless at the school because the teacher's going to disagree and you don't want your child to be targeted, or what is it going to do if I speak up, I'll just get shouted down. Now you have the option to take your child to apply for a Texas Education Freedom account and move your child to a different school where they can thrive and they can flourish. So vote with your feet. I know that there are, many, many, many parents who this past 2 weeks have been very upset at seeing how their school and their school district has handled this in a way that's not how they want their child to be educated. Mm-hmm. And even if they agree with the political message, they're saying this is a bad idea to be letting kids out to go roam the streets. Yeah. So when your school fails you, as our public schools in Texas have continually done so for a while, this is a way out. This is a way out that every parent in Texas should at least take a hard look at to say, is there a better place for my child where my child could succeed and thrive and be safe and flourish? And if so, take the time, the few minutes it is, to sign up for one of these school choice accounts.
And that's really the saddest part, really, Mandy. This is the right idea, so we always end on a sad note, so I apologize in advance. No, just kidding. Derek will laugh at that. The saddest part really is every one of these episodes, no matter what it is, whether it's the school walkouts or it's, the teachers acting badly and all this, the stuff that makes the headlines. The saddest part of this is the disillusionment, I think, parents, when they finally realize that the schools are not the partners that they thought they were. And that you thought when you join a school, or you think you have a good community, or you think you have good teachers, and maybe for the kindergarten and first grade, you love Miss Johnson, you love Mr. Smith, and then you start to realize something's happening to your kid, and then you start to ask questions, and you start to get roadblocks, and you're not getting the cooperation and the communication that you maybe you once did, and this sort of feeling, this like awful anxiety that you get that really the schools are not, again, the partners that you thought that they would be in helping to educate your child. And it's really sad because I feel like there's a lot of parents by the time you get to 4th, 5th, or maybe even for the first time you're realizing your kid's out there running around as an 8th grader screaming about ICE, and you're like, who is this person? Yeah. Maybe they feel like they've done something bad as a parent, or maybe they've lost their kid. Is it too late to turn back? Like, that's really sad to watch parents go through that.
It is. And I do see it all the time, and my heart hurts for them. And that's why, I follow the message boards. I obviously engage with parents. I give out my cell phone freely to help support them, because it is not too late. When we're talking about the kids that are leaving, yes, parents start saying that. I've got kids that in the later years of elementary school where they're starting to notice that there's no dress codes. And as girls are developing and things, they're really wearing really, really inappropriate clothing. They're wearing sports bras in elementary school. There's no dress code that's being followed. This isn't just one thing. Parents just see this. And the reality is that for so long they felt hopeless. If you could not strike the check to get into a private school, if you didn't get into a great public charter school, you were stuck and you kept thinking, I want to make this better. And I understand that. Sometimes making it better is saying, I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I'm not going to tolerate this. That is really the best way to communicate with a lot of these people. And so for the parents that feel stuck, they feel trapped, I encourage you to apply for the education freedom accounts. I encourage you to show up here and fight back against a whole list of priorities that we have at the foundation to course correct a system that's been run off the rails. And Austin ISD is one of the worst actors. It is poorly managed. It is not putting forth a high quality education. The leadership is much more focused on the secular Marxist ideology. They will not acknowledge that with an influx of particularly children that don't speak our language, English second language students, that we need to be doing immersion programs. They are lying to parents. I can't tell you how many parents have brought up the fact that these dual language programs are absolutely bogus. You are putting kids in there from foreign countries with no ability to communicate, and then you're putting in American children, and it is an absolute boondoggle because they are not teaching anyone, and they're not keeping them on grade level. We need to be doing immersion. We need to know who these kids are. That's something else that I want to point out. Look, Plyler v. Doe is the law of the land. For anyone that doesn't know what this is, the Supreme Court ruled in 82 that if a child is on our soil, we must educate them. It was Tyler ISD that was going against saying, these kids are coming over and this is costing a ton of money. Supreme Court said you must educate them. That's fine, but we need to be doing exactly what the hospital system is doing. I applaud Governor Abbott for saying, look, yes, you have to treat them, but now you need to track them. We need to know who these people are. We need to know how much we're spending on this. And I want to see that we adopt that here in Texas, that we are figuring out who are these children that are here illegally so that we can educate them. But also I really think we should be sending a bill to the federal government that's allowing any of these kids in here. If Plyler v. Doe is the law of the land, the feds need to be paying for them. Not just the state of Texas, not just our property taxpayers. We are hemorrhaging money. Property taxpayers are desperate. They just feel the constant pressure. We need to clamp down on how money's being spent. The profiteers that are driving up these bonds. We are at $215 billion of ISD bonds. This is enslaving our taxpayers. There are so many important reforms that we're going to be going after in the 90th legislative session. So I know we're on your show, The Right Idea, but I encourage all of your viewers to go to txparentsmatters.com, sign up so you can understand and know what's happening in Texas, and you can get involved again to take back our education system from the radical secular Marxists who are partnering with the Islamists, that red-green alliance, and say we're Americans and we demand that our students have the best education possible. That's how we serve every student in the state of Texas.
Well, we love cross-promotion with our podcast. Rob's about the only person in the building that doesn't have a podcast, so we'll give you the last word here. So many times we end these things just saying, parents have to get involved, parents have to get engaged. But if they're not getting engaged on this, what are you getting engaged on? I mean, I know it's tough sometimes to, with all the things you have to do as a parent to worry about. But, this really is, it's not just the future of Texas, it's now. It's what's going on right now. I mean, to your point, Mandy, it's the culmination of this decades-long, maybe century-long project of the secular Marxists stomping through our institutions, and now they're coming after our kids. So, word of advice to folks who might be finally waking up to this, Rob, and seeing what's going on.
I think the word of advice is, you're joining an army. There's so many else that are out there that are connected through the parent empowerment movement that share your frustration, agree with your energy, want, what's best for their children, what's best for your child. And so there's a much more, you're not alone anymore here. We can't have inmates running the asylum, and that analogy gets worn out sometimes. It's certainly true in terms of children dictating what happens at the school district. It's also the same in terms of what school districts do in terms of dictating to the state of Texas education policy and how we run our system of free public schools there. So there is great leadership and energy to fix this, and the past 2 weeks are just another reminder of how much more work we have to do, but we're going to get it done. We're going to start at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and we're going to fight to retake our institutions, to protect our children, and to provide for a better Texas.
And I think we as a movement demonstrated tremendous success with that. Certainly last year, that culminated in the, passing the school choice program, which is the largest day one school choice program in the history of the country, not just, of recent school choice programs, but ever. And we're seeing we're probably going to get to, there's only 100,000 spots, and we're probably going to get to 100,000 within the first week of it being open. And it really is a movement that started and was fomented by parents demanding that the schools get better, and if they weren't going to get better, that then demanding choices and their ability to have the right to do what's right for their kids. So anyway, a lot of questions still out there. We'll see what the districts end up doing. A lot of really good advice for the districts, for state lawmakers, and for parents today. So hopefully they take a lot of that to heart. So thank you all for being on the show and sharing your thoughts.
Great discussion.
All right. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as we always like to say at the end of the show, in the immortal words of Sam Houston, do good and risk the consequences. We'll see you next time.